Stop telling students that they're smart. Hi, my name is Alexis J. Guieb-Alimbuyuguen, but you can just call me AJ. This is my TED Talk. As a senior in high school, I can pass down one valuable piece of information. Khan Academy will never let you down. Who here recalls using Khan Academy? Meet Salman Khan, the creator. One night I was using the site while studying for a calc test when I stumbled upon an article of his. Why I will never tell my son he's smart. Now, this is of course confusing. I mean, the son of Khan was probably born a genius just like his father. He could probably help me with my calculus homework. However, once I read this article closely, I realized I was wrong, and almost took on what Khan describes as a fixed mindset. Salman Khan decided to praise his son, not whenever he succeeded at something, but when he struggled. He did this to instill a growth mindset within his son. The belief that capability and intelligence can be grown through effort, struggle, and failure. You see, if Khan had simply told his son that he was smart, he would have instilled a fixed mindset. The belief that people are either smart or not, that intelligence is fixed by genes. Had he told his son he was smart, his son likely would have stuck to what he knew. By pushing for his son to be proud of struggle, he is teaching his son to strive to learn more and experience things outside of his comfort zone. So then what happens when a school system does the exact opposite and tells students they fit into two categories? Meet the American Schools Public Education Gifted Program. This program teaches you that you're either a GT student or an AG student. GT means standard and AG means honors or gifted kid. In case you're not familiar with this policy, let's take a look at what are officially listed as beliefs about gifted education programming. AG or highly capable students are found across a diverse student population. AG or highly capable students are at a faster rate and are able to think with more complexity than their peers. AG or highly capable students need a more rigorous and differentiated curriculum. So to put it plainly, AG students are believed to be more intelligent and require a more rigorous curriculum compared to their standard counterpart. A fixed rate mindset are the main proponents of this gifted education program. Today I will discuss the effects of a fixed mindset, its harms on the development of a child's learning process, and what we can do to seek change. To understand the effects of this program, we need to look into the mind of a student that took a direct part in this system. The student who you will hear from is none other than me. Here are my beliefs about the gifted education programming system. The first statement. AG or highly capable students are found across a diverse student population. This program and the way it's set up follows you throughout elementary and middle school. In elementary school, AG students would have an additional class for enrichment, while the rest of the class stayed behind assuming whatever activities were planned for the day. Although AG students would occasionally be singled out, they still had the remainder of the day to socialize with the entire class. In middle school was when I noticed something was off. Typically, students only took one or the other when it came to AG or GT classes. I was actually a bit of a divergent case. I had both. My English, science, and history classes were all GT, or standard, and my math class was my one AG or honors class. The environment of my AG and GT classes were radically different, and in terms of diversity, were on two ends of a spectrum. In my GT classes, there was a majority of African American and Hispanic students. I was always one of the only Asian students. And in my AG class, there was always a majority of Asian and white students. The underrepresentation of minority students in gifted programs has been a hot topic of debate for years. Based on data from the 2006 Elementary and Secondary School Civil Rights Survey, they found that African American students are underrepresented in gifted programs by about 51%, and Hispanic students by about 42%, relative to their proportion in the nation's schools. Qualification for giftedness relies on tests, parent referral, and teacher referral. This means that minorities who are already underrepresented in gifted education are subject to the biases of their teachers. Furthermore, children in ESL, a program to help children with English as a second language, are undercovered in gifted programs solely because they do not speak English formally, even if they may excel in other areas of academia. Additionally, the need for a parent referral and testing makes giftedness exclusive because of socioeconomic barriers that minorities are more likely to face, since parents may work more hours or not speak English and do not have the money to pay for testing. Gifted education programs lack support for minorities and those who face socioeconomic barriers. Shared experiences of minorities reflect the biases that I stated. An African-American friend of mine shared with me that in middle school, on the first few days of school, upon entering an AG class, his teacher would ask if he entered the right classroom. To put this into perspective, I would like you to imagine if this were you. It's the night before school and you've prepared a fresh fit for your first day to make a good impression. You walk to class ready to greet your teacher. You say hello, and instead of getting a fair greeting like the other children, you've already had implications made about you. They ask you whether you belong, and you wonder too if this is where you belong. Most of your time as a student is spent in class, and relationships are built upon who you spend time with. Being in both AG and GT classes, I was able to create friendships across a multitude of cultures and backgrounds. However, for most students, they ended up befriending those closest to them, which restricted students from reaping the benefits of a multicultural student body. It wasn't even just the student body that was divided, but the attitude directed towards aspired teachers. GT teachers mostly gave us busy work, or work with no substance at all. This meant either doing a safety poster in science or doing fill-in-the-blank notes. Ultimately, we lacked enriching material. Meanwhile, in my AG classes, the bar was always set high, and teachers stroked the ego of their students, calling us more special than others. Oftentimes, we were told that this is an AG class, but where were the expectations in my GT class? Why didn't any of the GT teachers expect anything out of us? Often we would hear remarks such as, "I expected better." But how could there be any expectations when nothing was expected to begin with? Now, why does this matter to you and me? The actions of my teachers caused students to mimic attitudes that mirrored their teachers' thoughts. Many of my GT peers sincerely believed that they weren't smart, reflecting the fixed mindset they've been taught to believe. They felt inferior to the AG classmates, and along came a sense of shame by taking what was considered the dumb class. I remember this one classmate of mine in 6th grade that just left my science class one day. I remember that we asked him what happened, and it turned out his parents just signed some form to have him switch classes along with parent and teacher and principal approval. Many people laughed off the situation, but there was a much deeper meaning behind his actions. Students were influenced to believe that their intellect depended on what kinds of classes they took. And among the system of assorting classes to your intelligence, I began to ask myself, where did I belong? I wasn't just a GT kid or an AG kid, I was both. This made me wonder if I was either dumb or smart, as I found myself beginning to wrongly equate GT with inferiority and AG with intelligence, taking on that fixed mindset. I was deeply affected by this environment, but I ultimately chose to reject it. I knew my GT friends were just as smart as the AG kids. They were just never given the opportunity to prove it. My parents asked me why I didn't just transfer, but I felt that doing so would mean submitting to a program that I didn't agree with. Many of my AG peers started to develop arrogant attitudes thanks to the special treatment by teachers and appraisal by GT students. Although at the time I despised AG students for their special treatment, looking back at it, they were a victim of the system too. You see, there is no point in a stubborn fixed attitude if you cannot accept failure and learn to grow from your mistakes. Many AG kids I knew grew up thinking that they always had to understand something as it was a part of their giftedness or innate intelligence. So when faced with challenges they couldn't overcome easily, they were related back to that innate intelligence and not know how to move forward. And truthfully, once you entered this cycle, it was hard to get out. In high school, I could see the same kinds of patterns from middle school repeating themselves. I had peers that didn't know how to deal with challenges and felt embarrassed when met with problems that they couldn't solve. Overly high expectations sometimes resulted in what is vernacularly known as gifted kid burnout. Years of being primed to be the perfect student meant expectations ran high. And when children don't meet the expectations of the adults around them, shame begins to grow. And learning should never revolve around shame. It should be an environment that nurtures curiosity, joy, and excitement. And with many of my peers in GT, I didn't see them again in any of my AP or honors classes, probably after being taught thinking that standard was all they could ever amount to. For both AG kids and GT kids laid wasted potential. This program helped no one. AG or highly capable students learn at a faster rate and are able to think with more complexity than their peers. Through scientific studies, it has shown these programs actually restrict a student's intellectual capability and that everyone is equally capable of making academic achievements. Remember what I said earlier about how teachers' expectations shape student attitudes. Allow me to present to you a scientific study done by Rosenthal-Jacobson in 1968. This study showed how teachers' expectations influence student performance. They gave this phenomenon a name called the Pygmalion effect. When we expect certain behaviors of others, we are likely to act in ways that make the expected behavior more likely to occur. In this study, students were given a test in the beginning of the school year predicting how well they would do in school. Teachers were then given a list of the students with the top test scores, when in fact, the list was chosen of students at random. At the end of the year, all students would be measured again with the same test. When teachers were given the list of students with academic potential to succeed, they started paying them more attention. When all the students were tested again at the end of the year, these same students teachers showed special attention to were shown to have higher scores than the rest of their peers. This proved that when teachers expect certain students to do best, the students reciprocated and did better in school. So if we relate this back to the AG&GT program, it all makes perfect sense. Our words have more impact than we think. Just by simply believing in a student, we can increase their ability to excel in school. If we nurture our students to do their best, they will want to do their best and they will want to meet that expectation. There was never a group of students more intelligent than the other. It all boiled down to whether or not we believed in our students, as innate intelligence was never a factor to begin with. And the last statement, gifted and highly capable students need a more rigorous and differentiated curriculum. Clearly, students do not need a more rigorous and differentiated curriculum. As we have already discussed, we can say that this AG&GT program is heavily flawed. So what can we do to make a change? First, we need to stop separating students from their peers at different cultures and backgrounds. We need to keep students together, not set them apart. And we can do this through the implementation of growth mindset education systems. So what does that look like? Schools around the nation have already started to make this change and shift their classrooms in this direction. In Illinois, many of the high schools have implemented competency-based learning programs. Rather than making all students adhere to the same lesson each day, they allow students to go at their own pace. That means that they are able to turn to their own peers and go to online searches before asking for teacher help. This creates that pathway of struggle, failure, and upheaval. My classmates and I often joke that in school, whenever everyone fails a test, we just move on to the next unit, and once we speed through the unit, we take the final. And then when we take the final, we don't remember a single thing we learned that year. But this is actually a huge problem that creates gaps in our knowledge, making it difficult to connect the next unit to the one that relied on the past. Through growth mindset education systems, we can cover all these gaps, revisit past material, recognize where we encounter a difficult problem, and be proud of our struggles. We need to teach students that it is okay to fail, and it is okay to not know something the first time, rather than punishing them for not doing well. If students were expected to know all the answers, what would the point be in learning? Failing, struggling, and asking questions is essential to growth. Isn't finally getting a difficult problem done the most exciting part about learning? Now, I know my ideas may not be perfect, but accepting that imperfection nurtures growth. I know change will not occur overnight, but having even just one person consider my ideas means I've instilled a growth mindset in at least one other person. Often I hear my friends joke that learning is a struggle, but I hope for the day that my peers will say learning is a struggle with a smile on their face. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed it.